Okay, hello. My name is Denali, and today I'll be discussing the synthesis and evaluation of nitrogen-doped carbon-based supports and catalysts. Okay, so some background and motivation for this project is that currently our society is very dependent upon fuel sources such as oil and gas, and those are they have very negative effects on the environment, on the climate, a lot of CO2 emissions with those things. So therefore, we are looking for a way to diversify our energy economy and our energy sources. And one of these ways that we could do that is a hydrogen economy, where hydrogen would be utilized as both an energy source and as a feedstock for several industrial processes. And then with a hydrogen economy, one way that we can use hydrogen to do that is through polymer electrolyte fuel cells, which use hydrogen to create electricity through the production of water. Fuel cells require catalysts both on the anode and the cathode, but specifically here we are looking at the oxygen reduction reaction on the cathode, which requires a catalyst due to the sluggish kinetics of this reaction. Okay, looking at this oxygen reduction reaction catalyst and catalysts in general, overall catalysts are used to reduce the needed activation energy for a reaction to occur. So, and they reduce the energy required, so it makes the reaction occur quicker, and that is better for industrial processes as time is money, so we got to move forward, move fast. And catalysts themselves do not affect the energy of the reactants or the products of a reaction. And then the current state-of-the-art catalysts are platinum nanoparticles on porous carbons. You can kind of see an example to the right here. We have these gray blobs, which are our carbon supports. And these kind of darker black dots are our platinum nanoparticles. And then for this, our goal is to have these small platinum nanoparticles very evenly dispersed on the surface of this material, because with better dispersion, we have more surface area of these carbon supports covered, and therefore with more surface area covered, there are more active sites for the oxygen to reduce on. So one way that has been shown to have good beneficial effects on the platinum dispersion on the carbon supports is nitrogen doping. Nitrogen doping will help to improve that dispersion, but currently the mechanism is not very well understood. Nitrogen doping sites can be very diverse, and it's very tricky to isolate one type of defect on a carbon material. You can see on the right here, we have several types of defects. We have graphitic, pyridinic, quaternary, and pyrrolic. And it's very hard to figure out which one is specifically present. So therefore, we need to design experiments that will test which type of defect specifically helps to improve the platinum nanoparticle dispersion upon a carbon support. Therefore, in our study, we have been synthesizing nitrogen-doped carbon spheres. You can see our synthesis here on the left. We use resorcinol, formaldehyde, ethylene, diamine, as well as like ethanol and water. And we mix that, and then from that we do a soluble thermal polymerization. And then once we have those spheres, we pyrolyze them at anywhere from 600 to 900 degrees C, and then we get our nanocarbon spheres from that, our NC spheres. In the middle here, we have some XPS data. Each of the peaks are different nitrogen speciations, which are different amounts of nitrogen. They're showing different ratios of hydrogenated to graphitic nitrogen, which is it's showing how the chemical state of the nitrogen changes. And you can see that we have temperatures, we have 600 through 900. And then on the far right, we have our kind of table. So we can see that these are all the different ways that the nanocarbon spheres will look at different temperatures and then at different volume percents of EDA. So as we increase the percent volume of EDA, we also increase the amount of nitrogen that is present in our sample. And then as we move from a lower to higher temperature, we also have more graphitic and less hydrogenated nitrogen. We made these materials, but once we made these materials, we had to find a way to consistently characterize these materials. And that is what leads us to our next slide, which is TEM. And this is what we use for our characterization. TEM is transmission electron microscopy. Using TEM, we can get images at very high resolutions. We can also get quantification data for the elements that are present in our sample. On the left here, we have a simplified schematic of a TEM. At the top, we have our electron source, and that from that is electrons are shot from that, and that goes through several condenser lenses. And then kind of in this middle here where the beam switches almost is where our sample sits. And then at the bottom is our fluorescent screen where it's usually the cameras are and where we're able to see. With this, the electrons shoots through to the sample, and some of the electrons will hit the sample and diffract, but some of them will go through the sample through where there's holes, and they will hit the fluorescent screen, and from that we can get almost a shadow image if you want to think of it that way. So this is very useful for our characterization, and I have been learning to do this year, which has been really interesting and a lot of fun. And then from the TEM we get images like this. So here on the left, we have our nanocarbon spheres. You can see the spherical morphology. You can see all the kind of the relative sizes to each other and what they look like. And then once we pair the TEM imaging with the EDS, which is energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy, excuse me, you can get images as seen kind of on the right, where we are able to quantify the carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen, all sorts of different elements in the sample. And in this sample, both of these samples were done at 900 degrees Celsius. And to pyrolyze at that temperature, and you can see that we are able to get a pretty good amount of nitrogen. We have a lot of carbon as expected. And then we have our nitrogen, our oxygen, and yes. This is kind of our experimental design, so what we want to compare to each other. So we have commercial carbon, which has no nitrogen on it at all. It is undoped. And we want to compare it to nitrogen doped spheres pyrolyzed at 600, as well as nitrogen doped spheres pyrolyzed at 900. The commercial carbon that we use it's called Vulcan, and it is an industry standard. The 600 and the 900 nitrogen doped spheres are made in lab. I make those, and they are for all of these, all the three sets. The platinum is dispersed onto these materials by collaborators at UC Irvine, and they use a colloidal deposition. And here we have the platinum nanoparticles on the NC spheres. So at the very top, you can see the Vulcan material, which is not spherical at all. It's kind of blobby looking. And you can see we have at 100 nanometers and 50 nanometers. And looking and comparing these images from the Vulcan compared to the NCS spheres, you can see that the dispersion of the platinum nanoparticles appears to be more even on the NC spheres. But when you compare the NC spheres from the 600 pyrolization ones to 900 degrees ones, it's very hard to spot a difference. Therefore, we are working on quantifying the platinum amounts on these images with machine learning and statistical programs. And then conclusions and future work. So overall, nitrogen doping has been shown to be very beneficial to evenly dispersing the platinum nanoparticles on the carbon supports. Next steps for this project would include synthesizing other nanospheres with different amounts of EDA. So in these ones, we focused on the 1.18 volume percent EDA, but would like to look at the other ones and see how those compare, as well as looking at the different temperatures and see how that affects our platinum dispersion, our nanoparticle dispersion. And then another thing that we would need to test would be the electrochemical stability of these materials. How well will the platinum stay dispersed? Will it stay evenly dispersed after the material has been cycled through the oxygen reduction reaction many times? That is still unknown at this point, but we would need to look into that and figure that out. And then I'd like to thank my mentors, Dr. Svetlana Polipenko, as well as my graduate mentor, Margaret Fitzgerald. I'd like to thank the group. It's been a good couple years working with you all, and thank you.